Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today we're diving into one of my all-time favorite books, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Honestly, this book changed the way I look at self-improvement. It's not about making massive changes overnight, it's about small, consistent steps that build into something powerful over time. The author calls them atomic habits because they're tiny like atoms, but they have explosive potential when they compound.
Exactly. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, that real transformation doesn't come from huge, dramatic decisions, but from the little things you do every single day. Most of us think, I'll change my life when I find motivation, or I'll start big. But James Clear proves that it's the small daily habits that shape who we become. I remember when I first read it, I realized how much I underestimated the power of routine.
Right, and he starts the book with that powerful example of the British cycling team. They went from being mediocre for decades to dominating the Olympics, all because their coach focused on tiny improvements, just 1% better in every area, from the way they cleaned their bikes to how they slept. It shows how those little 1% gains stack up. That's the compound effect of habits, like compound interest, but for personal growth.
Yes, and it's crazy how our brain responds to small progress. James Clear explains that habits are like feedback loops. Every time you repeat a small positive behavior, you reinforce your identity and make it easier to do it again. The opposite is true too. Every small negative habit strengthens the wrong identity. That's why the book says you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. It's not enough to want something, you have to build the system that makes it happen naturally.
That line really stuck with me, focusing on systems instead of goals. Because goals are about the results you want, but systems are about the processes that lead to those results. For example, if your goal is to get fit, your system is your workout schedule and eating habits. If your goal is to write a book, your system is your daily writing routine. And the truth is, if you stick to your system long enough, success becomes inevitable.
Totally. And what I love about Atomic Habits is that it makes self improvement feel manageable. You don't have to overhaul your entire life. You can start small. If you just improve 1% every day, you'll be 37 times better by the end of the year. That's mind blowing when you think about it. It's a reminder that small habits matter, even when they don't seem to, because they compound over time.
Yeah, and I think people underestimate how powerful consistency is. We often quit because we don't see immediate results. But James Clear calls this the plateau of latent potential. It's that period where you're putting in effort, but nothing seems to change. Then suddenly, all your progress becomes visible at once, like ice melting. It stays frozen at 31 degrees Fahrenheit and then suddenly turns to water at 32 degrees. That's how habits work.
Exactly, and that idea really encourages patience. Sometimes we think our hard work is wasted, but it's actually building momentum behind the scenes. It's like what he calls the valley of disappointment. Most people quit in that valley because they don't see visible progress yet. But if you stick with your system long enough, the results will come. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency over time.
Right, and I think that's why the title Atomic Habits is so fitting. It's not just about being small, it's about being fundamental, like the building blocks of everything else. Every habit is an atom of your identity. You don't need to set massive goals, you just need to ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to become? And then start acting like that person in small ways every day.
Yes, and that's where the concept of identity based habits comes in. James Clear says that the most powerful way to change your habits is to focus on who you wish to become, not what you want to achieve. Instead of saying, I want to read more books, say, I am the kind of person who reads every day. That shift changes everything because your actions then become a reflection of your identity, not just your goals.
That's a beautiful point. When your identity aligns with your habits, change feels natural. You're not forcing it anymore. It's like the difference between trying to run because you have to and running because you see yourself as a healthy person. The book really makes you realize that true behavior change is identity change.
Absolutely. And it's so freeing because once you start identifying as the type of person who does those positive things, it becomes automatic. You don't need constant motivation. Motivation is temporary, but identity is powerful. The more you repeat the behavior, the more you reinforce that new identity. And that's the foundation for lasting change.
So now that we've talked about the idea of small habits and identity, let's get into the how. James Clear gives this amazing structure called the 4 Laws of Behavior Change, which basically explains how to build good habits and break bad ones. These laws are simple but so powerful. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. They sound almost too simple, but the deeper you go, the more you realize how much they shape every decision you make in your day.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like he's reverse engineering human behavior. When I first read those 4 laws, I thought, wait, that's literally how I fall into bad habits too. They follow the same pattern, just flipped. The cue triggers the behavior, the craving motivates you to act, the response is the action itself, and the reward teaches your brain to repeat it. Once you understand that loop, you can redesign your environment and your routines to work for you instead of against you.
Totally. And let's start with the first law, make it obvious. This one hit me hard because I realized so many of my habits happen on autopilot. James Clear says that habits are basically the brain's way of saving energy. Once something becomes automatic, it frees up your mental bandwidth. But if you want to build a new habit, you need to make the cue obvious enough to trigger it. Like if you want to drink more water, put a bottle of water on your desk where you can see it. The more visible the cue, the more likely your brain is to act on it.
That's so true. And I remember he also talks about the concept of environment design, which I think is one of the underrated ideas in the book. He says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. If your environment constantly tempts you with distractions, you're setting yourself up to fail. But if you shape your environment to make good habits easier and bad habits harder, you're basically automating discipline. Like if you want to eat healthier, put fruits in a visible bowl on your kitchen counter and hide the chips on a high shelf.
Exactly. And one practical tip from that section that really helped me was habit stacking. It's where you attach a new habit to an existing one. For example, after I brush my teeth, I'll floss. Or after I make my morning coffee, I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for. It's so simple, but it works because your current habits act as reliable anchors for new ones. The key is to make it clear and easy to remember.
Yes, I actually started doing that too. I added journaling to my morning routine by attaching it to my coffee ritual. Every time I sit down with my coffee, I grab my journal. No effort, no thinking. It's amazing how your brain starts associating one cue with another. The book explains that it's not about motivation, it's about design. You're designing cues that nudge you in the right direction automatically.
Right. And once your cues are in place, that leads to the second law, make it attractive. This part is about dopamine and how our brain anticipates rewards. James Clear says that it's not the reward itself that motivates us, it's the anticipation of it. So, if you can make your habits appealing, you're more likely to stick with them. One great technique he mentions is temptation bundling, where you pair something you need to do with something you want to do. Like, I'll listen to my favorite podcast only while I'm at the gym. That way you start craving the healthy behavior because it's linked to something enjoyable.
That's such a genius idea. I actually use that trick for my workouts too. I only let myself watch my favorite Netflix show when I'm on the treadmill. It sounds silly, but it completely changed how I see exercise. Before, I had to force myself to go. Now I look forward to it because it's tied to pleasure. That's the key to making habits stick, not relying on willpower, but making the process rewarding and fun.
Yeah, and it ties back to something deeper. The idea that motivation isn't about discipline, it's about alignment. When you make the desired behavior attractive, you're aligning your habits with your natural instincts instead of fighting them. The more you enjoy the process, the more consistent you become. That's something I wish I understood earlier. It's not about pushing harder, it's about designing smarter.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest mindset shifts Atomic Habits teaches. Stop blaming yourself and start blaming your system. If you keep failing at a habit, it doesn't mean you're lazy, it means your system isn't designed right. Once you understand these laws, you realize that willpower is overrated. Success isn't about being the most disciplined person. It's about creating an environment where discipline is barely needed.
Yes, and that's why the third law, make it easy, might be my favorite. People often think they fail because they lack motivation, but most of the time they fail because the habit is too hard to start. James Clear says reduce friction. The easier the habit, the more likely you are to do it. Like if you want to read more, leave a book on your pillow. If you want to play guitar, keep it on a stand where you can see it. The more convenient the action, the less resistance your brain feels.
That's so true. And he also talks about the 2-minute rule, which honestly changed how I built habits. It says that any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to start. For example, instead of go for a 30-minute run, just put on your running shoes. Instead of write 1,000 words, just open your laptop and write one sentence. It sounds ridiculously small, but it works because it focuses on showing up. Once you start, momentum takes over.
Exactly. The hardest part of any habit is the beginning. Once you're in motion, it's easy to keep going. I've noticed that whenever I apply the 2-minute rule, I end up doing more than I planned. I tell myself, I'll just do 2 minutes of cleaning, and then I end up cleaning the whole room. It's like tricking your brain to bypass resistance.
And that's actually backed by science, too. Once you start, your brain creates a momentum loop called the Zeigarnik effect. It basically means that unfinished tasks bother your brain until you complete them. So by making it easy to start, you create psychological tension that keeps you going. That's why James Clear says, standardize before you optimize. First, make it consistent, then make it better.
Yes, I love that because people often want to jump straight into optimization, like buying expensive gym equipment before they've even built the habit of showing up. But Atomic Habits reminds us that it's better to start small and stay consistent. Master the art of showing up first. Improvement will follow naturally.
Exactly. And then the last law, make it satisfying, completes the loop. This one's all about reward. Our brains are wired to repeat behaviors that feel good. The problem is, many good habits have delayed rewards, while bad habits have immediate ones. Eating junk food feels great now, but hurts later. Working out feels uncomfortable now, but pays off later. So we have to find ways to make the good habits feel satisfying in the moment.
Yes, and one strategy he suggests is using habit tracking. Just marking an X on your calendar every day you do your habit creates a sense of satisfaction. It's a visual cue that rewards your progress. You start craving the streak, not wanting to break the chain. It's such a simple trick, but it really works because it gives your brain that immediate dopamine hit.
That's exactly what I do with my reading habit. I use a habit tracker app, and it's surprisingly motivating. Seeing those streaks makes me proud, like I'm actually keeping my promise to myself. It becomes a small reward in itself. And when you feel good about your progress, it reinforces your identity as the kind of person who follows through.
Right, so to sum it up, make it obvious, make it attractive, so make it easy, make it satisfying. It's such a simple formula, but if you apply it consistently, you can reprogram your entire life. Habits aren't just small actions, they're votes for the type of person you want to become. All right, so now that we've covered the 4 laws of building good habits, let's flip the script a bit. James Clear also talks about using the inverse of those laws to break bad habits. And I think this is where a lot of people really struggle, because it's not just about building good habits, it's also about unlearning the bad ones that keep us stuck. The idea is simple. To break a bad habit, you just reverse the 4 laws. So instead of make it obvious, it becomes make it invisible. Instead of make it attractive, it becomes make it unattractive. Then make it difficult, and finally, make it unsatisfying. It's such a brilliant way to think about behavior change.
Yeah, and I love how that framework feels empowering. It gives you control back. You realize that your bad habits aren't a moral failure. They're just a system that's been optimized in the wrong direction. Like, if you keep scrolling on your phone late at night, it's not because you're weak. It's because your environment is designed to make that behavior too easy and too rewarding. The phone is right next to you, glowing, filled with endless dopamine. The cue is obvious, the action is easy, and the reward is instant. So naturally, your brain keeps choosing it. But if you flip those laws, you can start dismantling the pattern step by step.
Exactly. Let's start with the first inverse law, make it invisible. This is all about removing cues that trigger the bad habit. If you don't want to eat junk food, don't keep it in the house. If you want to stop wasting time on your phone, keep it in another room during work. The less visible the cue, the weaker the habit becomes. I actually tried this myself. I moved all my distracting apps off my home screen and turned off notifications. It's crazy how much that tiny change reduced my screen time without even trying.
I've done something similar. I started charging my phone in another room before bed, and it instantly improved my sleep. I used to scroll endlessly, telling myself just 5 more minutes. But now, without the cue in front of me, that urge doesn't even show up. It's like James Clear says, you can't eliminate a bad habit, but you can make it dormant. And the easiest way to do that is to stop feeding it cues. It's not about willpower, it's about invisibility. Out of sight, out of mind actually works.
Yes, man, it's so freeing. Then the second law flips into make it unattractive. This one is about reframing how you think about the bad habit. We tend to glamorize the things that harm us, like junk food feels comforting, procrastination feels like rest, social media feels like connection. But if you shift your mindset and focus on what those habits take away instead of what they give, they lose their power. For example, I started viewing procrastination not as taking a break, but as stealing time from my future self. That one mental switch changed how I see it completely.
That's so powerful. I did something similar with junk food. I used to see it as a treat, but now I frame it as energy that drains me. Every time I overeat, I don't feel rewarded. I feel sluggish. When you connect pain to the habit instead of pleasure, your brain starts associating it differently. That's basically reprogramming your reward system. I think that's why James Clear emphasizes identity again and again. When you shift your mindset to, I'm not the kind of person who does that, the habit starts losing its appeal.
Right, because it's not just about behavior, it's about identity alignment. You stop saying, I'm trying to quit smoking, and you start saying, I'm not a smoker. That's a powerful difference. You're telling your brain that this behavior no longer fits who you are. It's subtle, but it reshapes your self-image.
Yeah, and once your mindset changes, it naturally affects your choices. Then comes the third inverse law, make it difficult. This is about adding friction to bad habits. The more effort it takes to do something, the less likely you are to do it. I actually started applying this with my spending habits. I removed my saved credit card details from shopping apps. Now, when I want to buy something impulsively, I have to get up, grab my card, and type the numbers manually. Most of the time, that tiny friction is enough to stop me.
That's a great trick. I've done something similar with social media. I log out every time I finish scrolling. It sounds annoying, but that's the point. Every time I feel the urge to check Instagram, I think, I'll have to log in again, and suddenly it's not worth it. The more friction you add, the less power the habit has. James Clear calls it creating a commitment device. It's basically a way to lock your future self into good behavior by making the bad option inconvenient.
Exactly. Like if you don't want to eat sweets, don't keep them within reach. If you don't want to watch TV, unplug it and hide the remote. These tiny barriers seem trivial, but your brain loves convenience. The more steps there are between you and the bad habit, the more chances your brain has to choose differently.
And finally, the fourth inverse law, make it unsatisfying. This one is fascinating because it involves accountability. Since our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, adding a social or emotional consequence makes a huge difference. Like if you have a friend checking in on your progress, or if you publicly commit to a challenge, it instantly becomes harder to fail quietly.
Yeah, accountability is so underrated. I once had an agreement with a friend that if I skipped the gym, I had to send her $10. That small penalty made skipping feel painful. And guess what? I almost never skipped. It wasn't about the money, it was about the loss of integrity. You start associating the bad habit with disappointment instead of relief. That's the psychological trick James Clear explains. The brain responds strongly to immediate consequences, so we have to bring the pain closer to the action.
Exactly. That's the tricky part. Good habits often have delayed rewards, while bad ones have instant gratification. So the trick is to flip that balance. Make bad habits painful now, and make good ones rewarding immediately. Even something as small as celebrating your progress helps. It makes your brain feel good for doing the right thing.
Yeah, I love how the book doesn't make you feel guilty. It teaches you to play smarter. You realize habits aren't a moral thing, they're a design thing. You design your environment, your mindset, and your systems. That's how real change happens, not through guilt or pressure, but through small, smart adjustments that compound over time.
Absolutely. That's why I think Atomic Habits is so timeless. It's not a motivational book, it's a manual for human behavior. It gives you a science-backed way to understand why you do what you do and how to change it systematically. Once you get that, everything from productivity to health to mindset becomes easier to manage because you're not fighting yourself.
You know, what I love most about Atomic Habits is that it's not just about doing more, it's about becoming more. James Clear talks so much about how your identity drives your habits, and that's such a powerful idea. He says that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. So if you write one page, you're casting a vote for being a writer. If you exercise once, you're voting for being an athlete. Those votes may seem small, but over time, they shape who you are.
Yeah, and that's something I wish more people understood. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. You don't have to get it right every time. You just need to keep casting more good votes than bad ones. I remember when I first tried to build a reading habit. I used to think, if I miss a day, I failed. But James Clear says the key is not to break the chain twice. Missing one day is fine, it's normal. But missing twice turns a slip into a habit. That simple mindset helped me stay consistent without guilt.
Exactly. I used to do the same with working out. If I skipped one session, I'd feel bad and think, well, I ruined it, I'll start again next week. But now I see habits more like votes too. One missed vote doesn't cancel the rest. You just keep showing up and keep voting for the identity you want. I love how James Clear makes consistency feel so human. It's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent.
Right, and that's where the environment comes in. He says environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. It's such a smart observation because your surroundings influence your habits more than your motivation ever will. You can have all the willpower in the world, but if your environment is set up against you, it's going to be a constant uphill battle. That's why he recommends designing your environment to support your habits. Make good habits obvious and bad ones invisible.
Yeah, and I think people underestimate that. I once read a study where they found that moving fruit to a more visible shelf in a cafeteria increased its sales by more than 25%. Nothing else changed, just visibility. That's the power of environment design. I tried it at home too. I put my water bottle on my desk so I remember to drink more, and it worked instantly. It's such a small thing, but it changes behavior effortlessly.
I did something similar with my workspace. I used to keep my laptop in my bedroom, so I'd end up working late and not resting properly. Now I set up a small desk in a separate room, and it completely changed my focus. My brain knows this space means work, and my bedroom means rest. It's amazing how physical context can change mental behavior.
Yeah, that's called context-dependent behavior. It's like how you can focus easily at a library but struggle at home. The context signals what kind of behavior is expected. James Clear says one of the best things you can do is create different spaces for different habits. Even if your home is small, just having a specific corner for reading or exercise can make a difference. The brain loves associations.
Exactly. It reminds me of how he describes habits as solutions to recurring problems. If you think about it, every habit started as a solution. Maybe a good one, maybe not. Eating junk food might have solved boredom. Checking your phone might have solved loneliness. But when those solutions become automatic, they can trap you. Redesigning your environment helps you break that loop and find better solutions.
That's such a good point. And another thing I love from the book is the idea that you don't need to be extraordinary, you just need to be consistent. It's those small, boring actions that no one sees, showing up, doing the reps, writing a few lines, saying no to distractions that build real success. It's like what James Clear says, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement.
I love that line. It's so true. Just like money grows when you invest a little every day, your habits grow when you invest small efforts consistently. And the best part is the effects multiply over time. At first, the change is invisible, but later it becomes unstoppable. That's why I think this book is less about doing more and more about becoming aware. Once you see the patterns of your habits, you can reshape your life from the inside out.
Yeah, awareness is everything. When I read Atomic Habits, I realized how many things I did automatically. Like checking my phone first thing in the morning, it wasn't a decision, it was a reflex. But once I became aware, I could change it. Now I don't even look at my phone until after breakfast, and it makes my mornings calmer. Awareness gives you control back.
Exactly. Awareness turns habits from being unconscious to intentional. You go from living on autopilot to living by design. That's the essence of self-improvement. It's not just about achieving goals, it's about taking charge of your daily patterns. And when you do that, even small actions become powerful.
It's so true. I think a lot of people wait for motivation to start changing their life, but James Clear shows that action actually creates motivation. You don't need to feel inspired to begin. You just start small and the momentum builds. Motivation follows progress. That's such a liberating idea because it means you can start from anywhere, even with the tiniest step.
Yes, and that's the beauty of it. You don't need to do something huge. You just need to start with something small and repeat it often enough. Over time, it becomes part of who you are. That's how people transform, not by one big leap, but by 1,000 tiny steps in the same direction.
You know, after reading Atomic Habits, I realized that changing your life isn't about motivation or discipline. It's about designing systems that make good behaviors easier. James Clear says you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That's such a powerful truth. We often chase goals, losing 10 kilos, earning more money, finishing a book, but goals don't build progress. Systems do. If you focus on building better systems, the results come automatically.
Yeah, I love that part. He compares goals to the scoreboard. They just tell you if you're winning, but they don't help you play better. Systems are the actual plays. Like if your goal is to get fit, your system might be working out 3 times a week and prepping meals on Sunday. The system is what moves you forward. Once I understood that, I stopped obsessing over outcomes and started focusing on processes. And that shift honestly reduced so much stress.
Same here. I used to think that achieving goals was everything, but goals can actually make you unhappy sometimes, especially when you reach them and don't know what to do next. Systems, though, are ongoing. They keep you improving every day. That's why James Clear calls habits a lifestyle. You don't finish it, you live it.
Exactly. And what's cool is how this mindset applies to every area of life: money, health, learning, even relationships. Like, if you want to be a better friend, don't set a goal like call my friends more. Build a system, like setting a reminder every Friday to check in with one friend. It's small, but it builds connection. That's how you make values visible, by turning them into habits.
I love that. And the book also talks about the plateau of latent potential, that frustrating phase when you're working hard but not seeing results yet. He calls it the valley of disappointment. It's like when you're melting an ice cube. It looks like nothing's happening from 25 degrees Celsius to 31 degrees Celsius, but at 32 degrees, boom, it starts melting. That's how habits work too. You can't see progress right away, but it's happening below the surface.
That metaphor hit me so hard because most people quit in that invisible phase, right before the breakthrough. The real magic happens when you trust the process, even when results aren't visible. And that's where consistency comes in. You just keep showing up. Every rep, every page, every small improvement compounds over time. It's like planting seeds. You don't dig them up every day to check if they've grown. You just water them and wait.
Exactly. And that mindset helps in everything. I remember trying to build a journaling habit. At first, it felt pointless. Like, what's the big deal about writing a few sentences every night? But after a few months, it became my favorite part of the day. I could see patterns in my thoughts, track my moods, and reflect. That small habit gave me more self-awareness than any big goal ever did.
That's beautiful. And I think that's what James Clear means when he says, be more concerned with your current trajectory than your current results. It's not about where you are right now, it's about where you're heading. If your direction is right, success is inevitable. It's just a matter of time.
Yes, and I think that's why Atomic Habits is so different from other self-help books. It doesn't give you unrealistic promises or quick fixes. It's about doing the small things right, every day, even when nobody's watching. That's how change becomes permanent. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need to improve by 1% every day.
And those 1% improvements don't just stack, they multiply. A tiny change today can completely change the direction of your life 10 years from now. That's the compound effect. And what I love most is how freeing it feels, because you don't need to wait for a perfect day or a burst of motivation. You can start right now, just one small habit.
Exactly. And I think if anyone listening takes just one thing from this episode, it should be that. Start small, start now, and be patient with yourself. Habits aren't about perfection. They're about identity. Every time you show up, you're proving to yourself, I'm the kind of person who does this. And that's how you become the person you want to be. Not through big goals, but through small, consistent actions.
Beautifully said. And I think that's the essence of Atomic Habits, transformation through tiny steps. It's not flashy, it's not instant, but it's real. If you just keep showing up, one day you'll wake up and realize that the person you wanted to become is already you.
Yeah. And that's the most powerful kind of success, the one that grows quietly inside you until it changes everything around you.
Exactly. Well, that was a deep one. I feel like this book should be a must-read for everyone, students, entrepreneurs, parents, anyone who wants real, lasting change.
Totally agree. It's one of those books that doesn't just teach you something new, it changes how you see yourself.
And that's the perfect note to end on. Small habits, big results. One step, one vote, one day at a time.
Couldn't have said it better.
Anyway, thanks so much for spending time with us today. We really enjoyed talking about atomic habits and hope it inspires you to start your own small changes.
Yeah, remember, little steps every day can build a completely new version of you. Don't wait for the perfect time, just start now.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Take care and keep growing, one tiny habit at a time. Bye.